The wind was a cruel thing, a cold whisper in the pines that sounded like a mocking laugh. Detective Marcus Thorne felt it bite at the raw edges of his hope, each gust a fresh assault on his sanity. For 3 days, he had been off the case, officially. The brass had a policy for a reason. No one investigates their own. But the official search had been called off yesterday, the last of the volunteers packing up their fluorescent vests and leaving the woods to the silence, to the cold. Marcus stood by his truck, the scent of pine and frozen earth clinging to his jacket. Beside him, Sarge, his K-9 partner for 8 years, sat with an unusual stillness. The German shepherd's ears were pricked, his nose twitching, a low, rumbling whine in his chest that Marcus knew wasn't a sound of hunger or discomfort. It was a sound of unfinished business. "I know, boy," Marcus muttered, his voice hoarse. "They're all gone. They've given up." Sarge turned his head, his dark, intelligent eyes meeting Marcus's. The look was one of pure, unadulterated resolve. The dog was telling him, as clearly as any man could, that they were not done. They couldn't be, not while the faint, ghost-like scent of Lily still clung to the air. Lily, his daughter, 15 years old, bright as a new penny, and spirited enough to argue with a brick wall. Her disappearance had been a textbook case at first. A note on her bed, a backpack missing, a vague hint of running away with friends. But no friends had come forward, no trace of a passenger on a bus or a hitchhiker on a highway. The note was a single, cryptic sentence. "I'm sorry, Dad. I had to go." Marcus had read it 100 times. The handwriting was Lily's, no doubt. But something about the slant of the letters, the pressure of the pen, felt off to his trained eye. It was too neat, too deliberate. The note was a performance, not a confession. He opened the truck door and retrieved a small, faded plaid blanket, Lily's favorite, the one she'd had since she was a little girl. He held it out to Sarge. "Find her, boy. Find my girl." Sarge buried his nose in the blanket, taking a long, deep pull of the familiar scent. The low whine intensified, then stopped. He lifted his head, looked toward the tree line, and let out a sharp, decisive bark. Marcus felt a jolt of electricity. It wasn't a bark of frustration, it was a bark of purpose. "Okay," Marcus said, his throat tight with a hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in days. "Let's go." They started into the woods, the late afternoon sun casting long, skeletal shadows. The air was frigid, the ground hard underfoot. The official search had focused on the northern trail, a well-worn path that led to a small, abandoned hunting cabin. The theory was she was meeting someone there, or maybe using it as a temporary shelter. But Sarge veered off almost immediately, heading east, deeper into the untouched wilderness. Marcus followed, his mind racing. Why east? There was nothing out there but thick forest and the winding Silver Creek. He had a map of the area memorized. He'd taken Lily hiking here 100 times. This direction led to a network of old logging roads, long overgrown and impassable to vehicles. Sarge moved with a quiet, efficient urgency, his nose to the ground, his body low. He wasn't running, but he wasn't dawdling either. He was on. A scent. And it was a faint one, a cold one. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. He trusted this dog more than anyone. Sarge's track record was legendary. He'd found missing children, fugitives, even a lost hiker half buried in an avalanche. If anyone could find Lily, it was him. Hours bled into a long, gray twilight. The wind picked up again, carrying a fine spray of freezing rain. Marcus's face was numb, his fingers stiff inside his gloves. He could barely see in the dim light, but Sarge didn't hesitate. He was a shadow moving through shadows, a compass pointed at a single, unyielding destination. They came to a break in the trees, a small, sloping clearing. In the center, almost invisible in the gloom, was a structure, not the hunting cabin from the official search, but a dilapidated lean-to, a makeshift shelter of sticks and plastic sheeting someone had rigged up against a large boulder. It was crude, probably a kid's fort. Sarge stopped, his ears flattening, a low growl in his throat. He looked at the lean-to, then back at Marcus, his tail rigid. The scent was strong here. The dog was agitated. Marcus approached cautiously, his hand on the handle of the pistol holstered at his hip, a professional habit he couldn't break. He pulled back a corner of the plastic sheeting. Inside, the shelter was empty, save for a few dead leaves and a scattering of pine needles. But the ground was disturbed, and in the center of the patch of dirt, something small and white lay half-buried. He knelt, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. It was a hair tie. Not just any hair tie, but a black one with a small white enameled bee charm on it. He recognized it immediately. It was Lily's. Her friend Chloe had given it to her for her birthday. A wave of relief and a fresh tide of terror washed over him. She had been here. The scent was real. But why here? Why leave a clue like this? It was almost too perfect, a message. "I was here, Dad. I'm okay." "Good boy, Sarge," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. He reached out to pat the dog's head, but Sarge didn't respond. The dog was focused on something else, his body tense. He was sniffing the ground again, but not the dirt inside the lean-to. He was sniffing the ground outside, near the large boulder that formed the back wall of the shelter. Marcus's flashlight beam followed the dog's nose. The ground was rocky and uneven here, but there was a faint indentation in the soft mud where the rain had pooled. It was a footprint. A man's. Boot print, to be precise. The print wasn't muddy, but it was clear enough. And it was old. Maybe from a week ago. Sarge let out a sharp, quick bark, his tail starting to wag ever so slightly. He was excited, triumphant. He had found something else. He started trotting again, pulling on his leash, this time not into the woods, but along the edge of the clearing, heading back towards the direction they had come from. Marcus was confused. "Sarge, what is it? What's going on?" The dog ignored him, his pace quickening. They followed the overgrown logging road for another 15 minutes before they reached the main trail, the one the official search party had used. Here, the ground was well-trodden, a mix of mud and rock. The scent of 100 different boots and a dozen different people overwhelmed everything. But Sarge didn't stop. He turned onto the trail, but instead of following it north toward the abandoned cabin, he turned south. South. The opposite direction of everything. The direction of the main road, the direction of home. Marcus's blood ran cold. The note had date, said she had to go. The official search had assumed she had gone north to the cabin to meet someone. But Sarge was telling him something else. He was telling him that the trail to the cabin was a misdirection. The lean-to was a stage. The hair tie was a prop. Lily hadn't been running away from home. She had been running to it. And that's when he saw it, a small, almost invisible scuff mark in the mud, right next to the worn-out trail. It was a fresh print. And it wasn't from a hiking boot. It was from a sneaker, a small sneaker. A woman's or a young girl's. It was the only fresh print he'd seen since they'd left his truck. Sarge let out another low whine, his head now pointed directly at a small, secluded gravel path that branched off the main trail, hidden by a curtain of low-hanging juniper bushes. The path led to a small, private residence he knew well. It was the home of Robert Henderson, an old family friend, a man who had helped him and Lily after her mother died, a man who had been the first to offer to help with the search, a man who had looked at him with sad, kind eyes and told him, "I'll be praying for you, Marcus." The realization hit Marcus with the force of a physical blow. The scuff mark, the misdirection, the dog's refusal to follow the obvious path. It wasn't a kidnapping. It wasn't a runaway. It was a lie, and the dog was leading him to the source of it. His heart turned to a lump of ice in his chest. His friend, the man who had been a rock for him and his daughter, was hiding something. He had to be. Sarge sat down on his haunches, his head up, his gaze locked on the gravel path leading to Robert's house. He looked at Marcus, and his tail gave one slow, deliberate wag, as if to say, "I found the truth, Dad. Now it's your turn." The gravel path crunched under Marcus's boots, each sound a tiny betrayal in the still night. Sarge, no longer pulling, trotted silently at his side, his ears still pricked toward the small, well-kept home ahead. It was a modest place, a single-story ranch house with a porch light casting a warm, inviting glow, a light that felt like a punch to the gut. This wasn't the lair of some faceless predator. This was Robert Henderson's home. The man who had sat with him for hours after his wife died, offering silent support and mugs of lukewarm coffee. The man who had taught Lily how to change a tire and helped her with her calculus homework. Marcus stopped at the edge of the lawn, the well-manicured grass feeling alien beneath his feet. The last time he was here, it was for a barbecue. Lily had been laughing, her voice carrying on the summer air, a memory now so sharp it felt like a physical ache. He unclipped Sarge's leash, but the dog didn't bolt. He simply sat, his gaze fixed on the front door, his posture an unnerving blend of patience and coiled readiness. Marcus took a deep, shuddering breath and walked to the front door. He knocked, the sound echoing hollowly in the quiet night. A dog barked inside, a sharp, yapping sound that was immediately silenced. Then, the door opened. Robert Henderson stood in the doorway, his face etched with concern. He was a man in his late 50s, with a kind, perpetually worried expression, thinning gray hair, and a frame that had gone soft with age. He wore a flannel shirt and old jeans. He looked exactly as he should, a man at home on a cold Tuesday night. "Marcus? My God. Man, what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" Robert's voice was gentle, full of the same sincere compassion that had always defined him. Marcus's throat was dry. He could feel the lie congealing in the air between them, a thick, suffocating presence. "Robert," he managed, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, "I need to talk to you. About Lily." Robert's expression didn't change, not a muscle twitch. He simply opened the door wider. "Of course, come in. The boys from the search party were just here, poor souls. No luck, I'm afraid." Marcus stepped inside, and the warmth of the house hit him, along with the smell of brewing coffee and something baking. He saw a small terrier, Robert's dog, peeking around a corner, its tail wagging tentatively. Sarge remained at the threshold, a silent, imposing sentinel. "Sarge, too?" "Good boy," Robert said, his voice still too kind, too perfect. He reached to pat the German shepherd's head, but Sarge flinched away, a low, guttural growl escaping his throat. Robert froze, his hand in the air. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just long enough for Marcus to see the flicker of something else in his eyes. Not fear, but a cold, calculating alarm. "Sorry," Marcus said, his gaze fixed on Robert's face. "He's been on edge. It's okay. He's a good dog," Robert said, dropping his hand and regaining his composure. "Come on in, sit down. Let me get you a cup of coffee. You look frozen to the bone." Marcus shook his head. "I'm good. I was in the woods. Sarge and I were out there just following our own lead." Robert nodded, his hands now folded behind his back. The posture was a tell, a subtle shift from welcoming friend to something more rigid, more defensive. "Well, I wish you had told me. I would have come with you." "We found something," Marcus said, his voice dropping. He watched Robert's eyes, looking for any sign of recognition, any crack in the facade. "A lean-to, a hair tie, Lily's hair tie. It was a clue, Robert. It was meant for me." A shadow crossed Robert's face, but it was gone in an instant. He let out a small, sorrowful sigh. "Oh, Marcus, Lily's a smart girl. She knew you wouldn't give up. She's probably just playing a game, trying to throw you off the scent." "That's what I thought at first," Marcus said, taking a step closer. The air crackled between them. But then Sarge found something else. He found the trail, Robert. He found the real trail. The one that didn't lead to the old hunting cabin. The one that led here. Robert's face went white. The color drained from it so fast Marcus thought he might pass out. For the first time, the kindness in his eyes was replaced with something raw and desperate. His hands, still behind his back, clenched into fists. "What are you talking about, Marcus?" "I don't understand," Robert stammered, but the words were a thin veneer over a rising panic. "I think you do," Marcus said, his voice now a venomous hiss. "Sarge didn't follow Lily's scent. Not really. He followed a different scent. He followed a scent that was on her blanket. A scent that was in that lean-to. A scent that's all over your house, Robert." Robert took a step back, bumping into a small end table, making a vase of flowers tremble. "What are you saying? Are you accusing me? I'm not accusing you of anything yet," Marcus said, his eyes narrowing. "I'm just trying to understand. The note, Robert, the one Lily left. I'm a detective and I know a performance when I see one. The handwriting was too neat, too perfect. It was a copy, Robert, a copy of something Lily wrote a long time ago. A letter to her mother she was too scared to send. I found it in her old diary." The color left Robert's face completely now. He looked like a ghost. He shook his head, a single violent motion. "That's crazy, Marcus. You're grieving. You're not thinking straight." "Am I?" Marcus pushed. "Sarge followed the scent. He followed the scent of the man who took her. The man who wrote that note for her. The man who left that hair tie behind like a breadcrumb. You didn't expect me to come back. You didn't expect the dog to find you." Robert's composure shattered. He looked from Marcus to the silent, watchful dog at the door. His eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of a cornered animal. "I didn't take her," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I swear to God, Marcus, I didn't." "Then where is she?" Marcus demanded, his own emotions now boiling over. "Where is my daughter, Robert?" Robert swallowed hard, his gaze darting to a closed door at the back of the house, a door leading to the basement. His eyes were wide with a terror that was now visible, tangible. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "The truth, Robert. Now." Marcus's hand moved to his holster, a reflex born of years of training. "Tell me where she is." Robert's gaze fell, and he let out a choked sob. She's not here, Marcus. Not anymore. I didn't mean for this to happen. I was trying to help." The lie was over. The truth, or some part of it, was finally coming. But it wasn't the truth Marcus had expected. It was a truth that was more terrifying, more insidious, more damning than anything he could have imagined. Robert wasn't a kidnapper. He was a co-conspirator, and the horror of it was he was telling the truth. "Help with what?" Marcus asked, his voice shaking now, not from the cold, but from the fear that was coiling in his gut. "Her mother's death," Robert said, the words barely audible. We weren't just friends, Marcus. We were having an affair. She was going to leave you for me, but then she got sick. And she didn't want to leave you after all. She didn't want to hurt you. So she told me to stay quiet, to be your friend, to be there for Lily." Marcus felt the world tilt on its axis. The grief he had carried for his wife. The foundation of his whole life was a sham, a carefully constructed lie. "You're lying," Marcus snarled, his hand now gripping his pistol. "You're just trying to distract me. You're trying to hide the fact that you took my daughter." "I didn't take her," Robert sobbed, the tears now flowing freely down his face. "She came to me, Marcus. She found out. She found her mother's letters. She found out that her mother didn't just die. She had a choice, and she chose to stay. Lily thought her mother had left her to die. Lily thought she could have saved her mother if only her mother had chosen to be with me." The sound of a car, a low, rumbling truck engine, pulled into the driveway. Marcus heard the slam of a door, the sound of footsteps on the gravel path. Robert's eyes widened in horror. "Oh my God," he whispered. "He's here." The front door, which Marcus had not fully closed, was pushed open, and a man in a black jacket and a dark baseball cap walked in. He had a backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked at Marcus, then at Robert, and a slow, terrifying smile spread across his face. He reached into his backpack, pulling out a small, metallic object. "I told you I'd take care of it, Robert," the man said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You shouldn't have been praying for them. You should." The man in the black jacket stepped fully into the light of the entryway, the porch lamp illuminating a face Marcus had never seen before. He was young, maybe 30, with a hard jaw and eyes as cold and flat as lake ice. He held a small, flat, black case. Not a gun, but something else entirely. The terrifying smile on his face widened as he saw Marcus's hand on his holstered weapon. It was the smile of a man who knew he had already won. Robert Henderson, standing between the two men, looked like a shipwreck victim, his face a mask of abject terror. He was not looking at Marcus or at the newcomer, but at the backpack on the man's shoulder, a single horrifying object peeking out of a side pocket. A small black and white enameled bee charm, identical to Lily's. Marcus's world, already a shattered mess, splintered further. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. The man ignored him, his gaze fixed on Robert. "I told you, Robert. I said I'd handle it. All you had to do was nothing. But you couldn't even do that, could you? You had to bring the dog. The dog that just won't quit." The man's eyes flickered to Sarge, who was still standing in the doorway, his hackles now raised, a low, menacing growl vibrating in his chest. Sarge wasn't just agitated anymore. He was on high alert, his focus not on the man, but on the backpack. He was scenting something specific, something far more sinister than a simple lie. "Talk to me," Marcus snarled, pulling his gun free and pointing it directly at the man. "Where is my daughter?" The man's smile didn't waver. "You think you can just walk in here and point a gun at me? This isn't a precinct, detective. This is a private residence. And you're trespassing. On your friend's property, no less." Marcus glanced at Robert. "He's not my friend," he said, the words tasting like ash. "Not anymore. Now I'm going to ask you one more time. Where is she?" Robert, in a desperate last-ditch effort, lunged for the man. "Give it back! Give it back, you monster!" The man sidestepped with an easy grace, his hand moving in a blur. He didn't hit Robert. He simply placed the small, flat black case he was holding on the end table with a soft click. Robert, off balance, stumbled and fell, his face a mess of tears and snot. The man looked at Marcus. "See, this is why I have to handle things. Robert gets emotional, and emotional people make mistakes, like telling their best friend a deeply personal, irrelevant, and hurtful secret about his dead wife, right before a guy who's not here to listen walks in." Marcus's mind reeled. Irrelevant? The affair was irrelevant? He felt a fresh wave of blinding rage. "Nothing about this is irrelevant," he spat. "Oh, it is," the man said, a chilling calm in his voice. "Because her death had nothing to do with Robert. The letters, the choices, that was all a red herring. Robert was just a part of the story. A small part. The part Lily found out about. Yes. But not the whole story. Not the truth that she's dead because of. Dead." The word hung in the air, a physical weight. Marcus felt the bottom drop out of his world for the second time in an hour. His grip on the gun tightened, his knuckles white. "You killed her," he whispered, the question a raw, guttural plea. "Oh, no, no," the man said, shaking his head. "I didn't kill her. I just helped her make a decision, a final decision, one she couldn't take back." He gestured with his head to the black backpack. The tiny bee charm glinted in the light. Sarge, who had been an unwavering presence, suddenly let out a sharp, ear-splitting bark. He lunged forward, not at the man, but past him, directly at the backpack. The man, startled, stumbled backward, trying to keep the dog away. "Get your mutt!" he yelled, his voice losing its calm veneer for the first time. Marcus didn't hesitate. He knew that sound, that bark. It wasn't an attack bark, it was a discovery bark. He aimed his pistol at the man's feet and fired. The shot was deafening in the small house. The bullet shattered the hardwood floor just inches from the man's polished leather shoe. The man yelped and fell back against the wall, dropping his backpack. Sarge was on it in an instant, his teeth tearing at the side pocket where the bee charm had been. He pulled out a small plastic bag, a Ziploc. Inside, nestled on a bed of crumpled tissue paper, was the charm. But it wasn't just a charm. The back of it, he could see in the harsh light, was not enameled. It was a smooth, metallic surface. It was a data chip, a micro SD card. The man, now scrambling on the floor, was no longer calm. "No, get him, get the dog!" Robert, still sobbing on the floor, looked up. He saw the chip in the dog's mouth, and a new wave of fear, one far greater than his fear of Marcus, or even of the man, washed over him. "Don't let him get it!" he cried out, his voice a broken plea. Marcus, his mind racing to process this new, insane information, saw it too. The bee charm was a micro SD card. What was on it? What was so important that this man would kill for it? He barked a command at Sarge, a familiar police command he hadn't used in months. "Drop it! Drop!" Sarge, ever the professional, opened his mouth and the small plastic bag containing the chip fell to the floor. Before either of the men could move, the front door swung open again. It was a young woman, maybe 20, with long dark hair and a pale, drawn face. She was holding a small silver pistol, and her eyes, wide with fear, were fixed on the man on the floor. "Get away from him, Marcus," she said, her voice shaking, but firm. Marcus froze. He recognized the face. He had seen it 100 times in pictures. It was Lily's friend, Chloe. The girl who had given Lily the bee charm. The man on the floor, the man who had shot at Marcus's feet, looked up at Chloe, and a slow, triumphant grin spread across his face. "Chloe," he said, his voice a low growl. "I told you not to come here. I told you I'd take care of it." Chloe ignored him, her gaze locked on Marcus. "He didn't take Lily," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He just helped her. He helped her make a choice, just like he helped my dad." She motioned to the small silver pistol she was holding. It was a woman's gun, a tiny .22 caliber. It was Chloe's father's gun, and her father, a fellow officer, had died by suicide a year ago. It had been ruled a self-inflicted gunshot, a clean, tragic case. Marcus's hand, holding his own pistol, began to tremble. His mind, trained for decades to follow logic and evidence, was now a whirlwind of impossible connections. The affair, the lie, the note. It was all a smokescreen. The bee charm, the micro SD card, the friend who gave it to her. It all pointed to something else entirely, a conspiracy of silence, a web of secrets woven from the threads of grief and betrayal. The truth wasn't just that his wife had an affair. The truth was far more terrifying, far more personal. He looked at Chloe, at her trembling hand and her terrified eyes, and he saw it. The same haunted desperation he saw in his own reflection every morning. He looked down at the tiny plastic bag on the floor, the micro SD card glowing under the harsh light. The truth was on that card. And the truth, he now realized, was not about who took Lily. It was about who took her life. The silence in the room was a living, breathing thing, heavier than the cold outside, thicker than the lies that had just been exposed. Chloe stood in the doorway, her small silver pistol shaking in a hand that was too delicate for such a heavy object. Her eyes, filled with a sorrow that looked far older than her years, were fixed on Marcus. The man on the floor, who had just been a nameless thug, was now just a detail. The focus was on the two of them, the father and the best friend, both reeling from the same truth, from a secret that had claimed a life and threatened to consume another. "Chloe, what are you doing?" Marcus's voice was a ragged whisper. "Where is Lily?" Chloe didn't answer directly. She took a step into the room, her gaze sweeping over the chaos. Robert Henderson sobbing on the floor, the man in the black jacket, let's call him Finn, watching with a cold, predatory glee, and the tiny plastic bag with the micro SD card, the B-charm, lying between them all. "He didn't take her," Chloe repeated, her voice a little stronger now. "She ran away, but not from you. She ran away for you, and for her mom." Finn laughed, a short, dry sound that grated on Marcus's nerves. "See, I told you. This is what happens with amateurs. They get emotional. They make a mess. All I had to do was collect a file, one file. But no, she had to send him a breadcrumb, a sentimental, stupid breadcrumb." He gestured to the card on the floor. Robert, seeing a moment of distraction, made a desperate lunge for the card. Finn, with a speed that belied his casual demeanor, kicked out, catching Robert in the chest and sending him sprawling back into the corner with a cry of pain. Marcus, his gun still raised, shifted his aim from Finn to Robert, then back to Chloe. He was a compass, spinning wildly, a detective without a direction. "Someone needs to start talking," he growled. "Now, Chloe, what file? What's on that card?" Chloe's eyes welled with tears. "My dad," she said, her voice cracking. "He was a good cop, Marcus. He was your partner." Marcus froze. Chloe's father, Officer David Miller, had been his first partner on the force, a decent, straight-arrow cop. His suicide a year ago had been a shock to the entire department. A sad case of burnout, they'd said. "That's not what happened," Chloe continued, her voice now a fierce, desperate confession. "He didn't kill himself. He was killed. He found out something. Something about a case he and your wife, Sarah, were working on. He found out a lot of things, and he made a copy. He put it on a micro SD card and hid it. And he told me to give it to Lily. To her, not to you. Because he said you were too close, that you wouldn't believe it." Finn, seeing his window of opportunity, scrambled to his feet. "You stupid, sentimental girl," he hissed at Chloe. "You just gave away the whole game. Now your dad's sacrifice was for nothing." He lunged, not for the card, but for Chloe. Marcus, a trained killer instinct finally taking over, didn't hesitate. He swung his pistol and fired a shot directly into Finn's shoulder. The sound of the gunshot was a deafening crack, and Finn cried. Out in pain, stumbling back and collapsing against the wall, a dark crimson stain blooming on his jacket. The flat black case on the end table fell to the floor, its contents spilling out. Marcus saw what was inside, a small, portable micro SD card reader. Finn wasn't there to steal the card. He was there to retrieve its contents. Sarge, who had been an unwavering presence, now moved with a purpose. He went to Marcus's side, his body a solid wall of muscle, his teeth bared at the groaning Finn. He was a shield. Marcus pointed his gun at Finn's head. "Who are you working for?" he demanded, the words punctuated by the dog's low, rumbling growl. "Who sent you?" Finn just sneered, his hand clutching his bleeding shoulder. "You'll never find out, detective. The man who sent me is a ghost." Whisper. "You're too late." "I'm not too late," Marcus said, his gaze dropping to the micro SD card on the floor. "I have the truth." Chloe, tears streaming down her face, lowered her gun and pointed it not at Finn, but at Robert. "He helped," she whispered, her voice a broken thread. "He helped them. He helped my dad. He was the one who told them where my dad was hiding the information. He was the one who told them my dad was a liar." Robert, cowering in the corner, looked up, his face a mess of terror and guilt. "I didn't know," he sobbed. "I swear I didn't know what they were going to do. I told him where the chip was. I told him David was lying about the suicide being a murder. I just wanted it all to be over. I thought they would make it all go away." "Make what go away, Robert?" Marcus demanded. Robert shook his head, his body trembling. "The truth about Sarah, the truth she was trying to hide." He pointed a shaking finger at the micro SD card on the floor. "The real reason she died, not the affair, not the sickness. The truth is on that card. And it was going to destroy you, Marcus. That's why Lily had to run away. She couldn't tell you. She was trying to protect you." The world seemed to spin on its axis. His wife, his daughter, his best friend, his partner, all of them tangled in a web of deceit and death, all centered around a single, tiny, innocuous-looking data chip. Marcus knelt, his eyes never leaving Finn, never leaving Chloe, and with a shaking hand, he picked up the small plastic bag and held it tight in his palm. He looked at the micro SD card, the little black bee, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that he was holding his entire life in his hand. The truth that had killed his wife, the truth that had taken his partner, the truth that was now threatening his daughter. He looked at Chloe, at her tear-streaked face. He saw the same haunted look he saw in himself. He saw her love for Lily and the desperation of her actions. He saw a young girl who, like her father, had tried to do the right thing and had gotten caught in a firestorm. He looked at Finn, who was now just a pathetic, bleeding man on the floor, and he felt no triumph. He looked at Robert, who was a broken man, a hollow shell of the friend he had once known, and he felt nothing but a cold, empty rage. But then he looked at the micro SD card in his hand. The truth, finally. It was so close he could almost taste it. And then, with a speed born of years of desperation, Robert, the broken man, lunged again. Not for the card, not for Finn. He lunged for Marcus, and with a scream of rage and grief, he tackled him to the floor. The gun went flying. The bag with the micro SD card flew from his grasp and skittered across the polished hardwood, coming to a stop in the corner, a single, tiny plastic bag on the dark floor. Sarge, confused by the sudden attack, let out a sharp, surprised bark, and in that moment of chaos, while the two men wrestled on the floor and tea, chaos erupted. Robert's desperate tackle sent Marcus crashing to the floor, the heavy thud of their bodies a raw punctuation mark in the silence. The gun slid across the polished wood, coming to rest under the kitchen table. The small plastic bag with the micro SD card inside skittered into a corner, lost in the shadows. Finn, the wounded man, no longer a ghost but a very real threat, seized his chance. With a grunt of pain from his bullet-shattered shoulder, he aimed his silenced pistol at Chloe. The tiny silent weapon was a chilling symbol of the cold-blooded efficiency he represented. "No!" Chloe screamed, a sound of pure terror. Marcus, his head hitting the floor with a sickening thud, was momentarily stunned. He was disarmed, disoriented, and pinned under the weight of Robert's panicked grief. He was a detective who had just lost control of the scene, but he was not alone. Sarge, the unwavering sentinel, the compass that had led him to this truth, saw the silent gun and the terrified girl. The dog didn't need a command. He didn't need to be told. His entire purpose, his training, his primal instinct was to protect. With a ferocious snarl that was more beast than dog, Sarge launched himself at Finn. The German shepherd was a blur of teeth and muscle. He hit Finn with the force of a battering ram, his jaws clamping down on the man's gun hand. The silenced pistol clattered to the floor, and Finn cried out, a high-pitched scream of agony. Sarge didn't let go. He shook his head, a wild, violent motion that was designed to break and tear. Marcus, no longer a detective but a father fighting for his life, used the distraction. He rolled off Robert, whose grip had loosened in his terror, and scrambled on his hands and knees. He didn't go for his gun. He went for the one on the floor, the silenced pistol. He kicked it away from Finn's reach and into the corner, out of play. Then he scrambled under the kitchen table, retrieving his own pistol. Robert, seeing the tide turn, was no longer a threat. He was a whimpering lump on the floor, his face buried in his hands. Finn, bleeding profusely from both the gunshot. Wound and Sarge's savage bite was a pathetic mess. Sarge, his job done, released his grip and backed away, a low, menacing growl still rumbling in his chest. He stood over the man, a silent, unyielding judge. Marcus, back on his feet, his gun now steady and aimed, was in control. "It's over," he said, his voice a cold, hard line. "It's all over." Chloe, her small frame trembling, looked at Marcus with a mix of relief and terror. Her eyes, however, were fixed on the corner where the plastic bag lay forgotten. She knew, with a certainty that transcended the chaos, that the real battle was not with the man on the floor, but with the information in that bag. Marcus secured Finn, using the man's own belt as a makeshift restraint for his hands. He then went to the corner where the bag had fallen. He knelt, his heart pounding in his chest, and picked up the small plastic bag. The tiny bee charm, the micro SD card, was finally in his possession. He reached into Finn's discarded backpack, retrieved the card reader, and with hands that were shaking despite his calm facade, he inserted the chip. He then found a small laptop on Robert's end table, likely a family laptop, and plugged the card reader into it. He opened the file. It wasn't a video, but a collection of documents and audio files. He clicked on the first file, an audio recording. The voice was unmistakable. It was his old partner, David Miller. "If you're listening to this, I'm probably dead," David's voice began, a haunted whisper from the grave. "Or worse, Sarah is. She and we were working a case off the books. It was big. Bigger than we knew. It went all the way to the top. Deputy Chief Wallace. He was running a protection racket for a pharmaceutical company that was covering up a faulty painkiller, a drug that was killing people. Sarah and we were getting close. We had the evidence, the names, the bank accounts, the shell companies. We had it all. And then he found out. He threatened Sarah. He told her if she didn't back off, he'd make sure her cancer came back. He was the one who poisoned her, Marcus. He made her think she was sick. And then, when the time was right, he gave her the final dose. And when I found out, he killed me. He staged it to look like a suicide, and he had Robert help him with the cover story. Robert had no idea. He just thought he was helping an old friend. The words were a hammer blow. Marcus's wife, his partner, his entire life was a lie. The sickness, the affair, the suicide, all of it was a cruel, elaborate deception designed to protect a monster in a suit. And then he found a second file. A video. It was a selfie video shot on a cell phone. The shaky camera revealed Lily's tear-streaked face. "Dad?" she whispered. Her voice choked with sobs. "I'm so sorry. Chloe's dad, he gave me this. He gave me a copy of what he found. He told me to hide it, to protect it. I found out. Mom didn't die from sickness. She was murdered, and they're going to come for me now. I can't go to the police. They're compromised. I can't go to you, Dad. Because they know how to get to you. And I can't risk them taking you too. I have to go away. I have to make them think the truth is gone with me. I'm going to make sure they can't find me, but I'm going to send you a clue, Dad. A breadcrumb, just in case. The video ended. The screen went dark. Marcus sat there for a long time, the glow of the laptop screen the only light in the now silent room. His world was broken, shattered into a million pieces of betrayal and grief. He had the truth, a truth that had cost him his wife, his partner, and his daughter. The truth that had driven Lily to run away and hide. He looked at Finn, the bleeding man on the floor, who was now just a soldier for a much larger, more powerful enemy. He looked at Robert, the broken man, a hollow shell of the friend he had once been. He looked at Chloe, the brave girl who, like her father, had tried to do the right thing, and had paid for it with her innocence. And then he looked at Sarge. The dog sat beside him, his head resting on Marcus's knee, his deep brown eyes a mirror of unwavering loyalty. The dog had not given up. He had not believed the lies. He had followed a scent that was stronger than grief, a truth that was buried deeper than any grave. Justice was not just for his wife or his partner. It was for Lily. It was for the girl who had given up her life to save his. He had the evidence. He had the names. He had the proof. And he had a purpose. He had to finish what his wife and partner started. He had to bring down the ghost, the whisper, the man who had stolen everything from him. And he would not stop until he did. He would not quit, just like his dog.